It's a sad time in the automotive world. After 49 years, Jeep has just recently announced that they'll be discontinuing the Jeep Cherokee. Over the years, the Jeep Cherokee has cemented its name into American car culture. It's a name synonymous with family road trips, adventures, and freedom. It's hard to believe that soon we'll be approaching a time where you can no longer walk into your local Jeep dealership and drive off in a brand new Cherokee. But maybe it's not so sad. You see, the Cherokee nameplate has been on decline since 2001 when they discontinued the XJ Cherokee and Jeep introduced the Jeep Liberty. So essentially, this brand went from a rugged, beloved off-road vehicle to an econo-box crossover that looks like a drowsy marsupial. Now, it's worth mentioning that these Liberty models seem to be fairly reliable. I still see tons of them on the road today. However, without fail, they always seem to be followed by a cloud of blue smoke. The most recent Cherokee was introduced in 2014, and it's the one that's still being produced today. The only resemblance this Cherokee shares with its ancestors is its nameplate. However, it's nothing more than a rebranded Fiat product, and we all know their track record for reliability. Despite high sales numbers, these Cherokees were plagued by constant engine and transmission failures, and they're the perfect vehicle for you to buy if you enjoy waking up to the warm smell of sweet antifreeze coming out of your vents when you turn on the heat. So with those important historical facts in mind, I'd like to introduce you to this 1996 Jeep Cherokee XJ. Now, I do want to be extremely upfront with you that I am super biased towards these XJ Cherokees. It is one of my all-time favorite cars. There aren't very many cars out there that combine so many endearing qualities without much compromise at all. You see, this Cherokee looks so good. It's so off-road capable, tremendously reliable, yet you can still drive it as a normal everyday driver. Sure, the third-gen 4Runner checks a lot of these boxes. However, Toyota products simply don't have the character. They're very boring cars, and they do not speak to my soul as much as these old Jeeps. In fact, I used to own a Jeep Wrangler TJ, a car that ironically attracted a tremendous amount of attention despite its relatively cheap price tag. People would always approach me and ask whether or not they should get a TJ Wrangler for themselves, and I'd always stop them right there and say, no, you should get a Jeep Cherokee XJ, because this thing takes all of the awesome qualities about the TJ Wrangler and it eliminates all the things that suck about it. So you get an off-road capable, iconic, cool looking SUV without dealing with the shortcomings of driving around on the highway in a tent. The first thing I want to do is start off with the styling of the Jeep Cherokee XJ. Let's just face it, this is one of the best looking SUVs ever made. It's simple, boxy, and iconic. There simply isn't a bad angle on this entire vehicle, and it's hard to believe this body style was introduced nearly 40 years ago. In fact, I have a personal story about just how good the styling of this Cherokee is. You see, back in the day, my dad was rolling around like a badass in a bright red Cherokee XJ Limited, and it eventually caught the attention of my mom. Years later, she still recalls being attracted to the Jeep on that day, and it can be said it played a significant role in leading to their eventual marriage. Pretty cool. Now that we got the styling out of the way, I want to take you up close and personal with the engine bay on this Jeep Cherokee XJ. This Jeep Cherokee is powered by the legendary AMC inline 6-cylinder 4-liter engine that debuted way back in the early 60s. However, Jeep kept this engine around until 2006 because it was simply that good. It's robust, durable, reliable, and incredibly torquey at the low end. Owners of cars with this powertrain in it regularly record mileage of upwards of 400,000 miles without breaking a sweat. But what the 4-liter engine touts in reliability, it certainly lacks for in fuel economy. You see, when I owned my TJ Wrangler, I regularly recorded fuel economy figures between 11 and 14 miles per gallon. So it's safe to say that you should start becoming well acquainted with your local Exxon station if you're thinking about buying one of these. Up next on the interior, you won't find anything very fancy in here. Instead, you'll get a durable, practical interior that's ready to take on the demands of a rugged individual. You have hard plastics on the dash, and in the center console, you only have a radio and climate controls, and I don't even think the AC in this thing works. Over in the driver's information area, you'll just have the gauges that are necessary for everyday driving: your speed, tachometer, fuel, temperature, battery voltage, that kind of thing. Over in this area, I'm surprised there is cruise control in this car, which is quite a luxury feature for this type of vehicle. You'll also have your brake, gas pedal, and steering wheel. That's it. No fancy touchscreens in here, driver aids. You're on your own in the Cherokee, but in my opinion, that's for the better, because driving one of these things is just so much fun. It's so pure, and you can really connect with the vehicle. And that's one thing I really like about this. One other thing I'll mention about the interior is that these seats are extremely comfortable. Jeep in these vehicles use some sort of ultra soft foam, so when you just sit in the seats, you sink into them and you can just relax. When you close the door in the Cherokee, you'll be surprised by just how solid they feel, despite how thin they are. The handle is a nice chrome material, and you only have roll-up windows in here. Auto manufacturers also kept things way simpler back then when it came to controlling the vehicle. The transmission is just this very rudimentary T shifter, and the four-wheel drive is a lever too. No fancy knobs with electronic things. When you get into four-wheel drive, you'll know it because you feel it going in. Furthermore, there's a manual parking brake in here, which is common for many years, but it's starting to fade away in the current market, and it's very nice to have one in a vehicle like this. Up next in the back, you may be surprised by just how small the seats in the back here really are, and that's because the Jeep Cherokee is only 6 inches longer than a 2023 Mini Cooper. The vehicles just simply weren't that big back then, which helps tremendously when maneuvering in cities and with blind spots and that sort of thing, but it does fall a bit short in terms of rear seat space. Now, I will say that I am 5'10", and the seat is in a comfortable position for me when I'm driving, and there is still a decent amount of legroom back here. Not a tremendous amount, but certainly livable, but it's more of the feeling that you get back here. I mean, the ceiling is relatively close to your head, and you kind of sit on top of the front seats. It's like an arena or like a stadium seating type thing. So it's kind of a weird sensation back here. Plus, when you go to get out of the Cherokee, it's just incredible how small the door is. It feels like you're in some sort of military vehicle and you're like climbing out of a hatch. It's just crazy. Like, my foot has a hard time like even fitting through the gap. Like, the gap is the size of my foot, okay? When you're climbing out of here. And when you get back in, it's just like the opening, like you have to climb over the wheel well and then get your foot through the foot-sized gap. But once you're in, it's actually quite comfortable. The seat is very comfortable. There's no headrest in here, which is fairly common for the time. And they have these very old school seat buckles. The front seats do have a more modern seat buckle, but we have the old airline style buckles back here. And despite the lack of safety features back here, Jeep didn't forget to include an ashtray. So while you're getting whiplash, you could still be chain smoking, which is very important. Moving on to the cargo area, it's also become apparent to me that one of the reasons why the rear seat space is so limited in the Cherokee was that Jeep was saving a tremendous amount of room for the trunk space. I guess with the marketing of this vehicle being towards off-roading and adventuring, Jeep reasoned that cargo space was more important than the comfort of humans, which seems like a reasonable compromise to me. Now, for the size of this vehicle, this cargo space is actually quite generous, and you can increase it even more by folding down the rear seat when necessary. Now, another thing to note is while the visibility around the Cherokee is way better than any modern car, some of it is reduced by the spare tire back here, but otherwise the small pillars and abundant windows around the Cherokee make it incredibly easy to see out of, and that's one thing I love. The best safety feature is not getting in an accident, so being able to see out of your vehicle is very important. Lastly, I want to talk about just how iconic these vehicles are. The silhouette of the XJ Cherokee is etched into American culture. Drive through any town of any size in this country and chances are you'll see a few of these roaming the streets. Despite the last Cherokee rolling off the assembly line over 20 years ago, these cars are still ubiquitous, and to many people, seeing one out on the road is just as symbolic as seeing a McDonald's. And with that, it's time to get behind the wheel of this icon and see how it drives out on the road. Let's go. Alright, so we are out on the road in the Jeep Cherokee XJ. Now this is a very exciting day for me because I don't get to drive these that often. I've driven a few of these, but I've always wanted to own one of these and have not been able to find the right one. But my day is coming. But anyway, I've been very thankful to have been loaned this Jeep Cherokee XJ from my friend here in Tucson, Arizona, and we are ready to get it out on the road. And the first thing you'll notice anytime you drive a 4-liter engine, 4-liter inline-6, AMC engine, is just how smooth the power delivery is and how abundant the power is. Despite this vehicle's age, this is a 96, so it's well over 20 years old. The power is excellent and it's super easy to drive around in everyday situations. The handling leaves something to be desired. The owner tells me that there's a problem with the power steering, which is contributing to quite a bit of play in the steering. So as we get onto this road here, I'll demonstrate, but this is the situation here. We're going straight. So I don't believe that's how all of them drive. My Jeep Wrangler TJ had much tighter steering, so that's probably an issue that's specific to this car. The transmission shifts really nice, and as I was saying, there's just not that much compromise to driving this car every day. You have amazing visibility. There's not that much noise in here at city speeds, at least. The transmission shifts really smooth. The seats are comfortable. It's just an awesome car to drive every day. Now, of course, you don't have many luxury features in here, but that is par for the course with a vehicle of this type. When you're buying a Jeep Cherokee, don't get into it expecting a luxury vehicle, but instead you get a vehicle that's ready for any adventure and ready to tackle any off-road trails that you take on. This car just drives great. Now let's see how it accelerates here. Acceleration's awesome. You never forget the sound of an inline-6. It's just so smooth and so well balanced compared to other cars which use 4 cylinders that are a lot more grumbly. This is a very smooth engine, and the owner has replaced the transmission in this car, but we are at 296,000 miles, and it's the original engine, right? Yep. Yeah, so 296,000 miles on the original engine is pretty impressive, and as you saw earlier under the hood, the engine looks great. So these cars really last a long time, and that's why it's one of my favorite cars. And so with that, I hope you enjoyed the review. Thanks for joining me along on this journey, and it's been so exciting to share this Jeep Cherokee with you.